Welcome, Glenn Mierendorf here from Sound Sanctuary Austin, and we thought we'd do a little filming in one of our clients' homes and talk about his love for hi-fi and the pursuit of the ultimate sound experience. Great friend Craig here with his system in the Austin area, and thought we'd do a little segment on how you...
I'm looking forward to this. I don't know where it's going to go,
Exactly.
but we'll see.
Well, I guess part of it is hi-fi is the journey, right?
That's it.
Do you have like the formative experience? Did you have gather around your family's Victrola, or what started this journey?
I can't say that. It's. I'll tell you where I got the bug. Number one, I've always was interested and enjoyed music, and had some very good friends in high school that were actually pretty good musicians, and they had a band. I went around with them some, but really enjoyed music, and bought a reasonable system at the time, even to go off to college. So my first system was back then, I think it was a JVC, I don't know what it was, but for what I could afford, I would lay on the floor and put the speakers on both sides and listen to...
So not exactly traditional stereo imaging.
No, but to me it still was a start. But what kind of changed the game, I had a friend that was going to Wisconsin Whitewater, and I went up to visit him.
Okay.
And we went to a party, and the guy who was holding the party had at that time, a high-end JBL system with Macintosh and whatever.
Okay.
And my jaw dropped. I mean, for me at that time, it was the best sound I heard. And literally, even to this day, I still have planted in my mind to replicate what I heard that day.
So was it that it sounded like you were at a gig, or was it loud, or what was so?
No, it wasn't loud. It was detail. It was resolution. It was the quality of the music. Mm-hmm. The singers sounded like they were singing, not muffled. It was just, the quality was better than I had ever heard, and it kind of set the tone in my mind of what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So, of course, when you're in college, you have no money, and I lived with my JVC, but that was fine. But I'll share with you, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, we got married right after I graduated. I mean, like the next day.
Wow.
And I never had 2 nickels to rub when you're a student and all of that. And after you get married, you get some wedding gifts and all of that.
So you rolled it into the
next day. So
Great plan.
I bought my first system.
Remember this, young patrons. It all can start with a marriage proposal.
Well, I got to tell you, I just had a wife who supported that, and the journey would have not been a journey if I didn't have a wife that enjoyed it and was also extremely supportive of that. And so with that, I really appreciate it. You know, you had asked to kind of talk about your journey, and I was trying to think what drove the journey.
Well, your journey always continues. Every time I talk to Craig, he's got something that he's thinking about. And sometimes those are things that come from Sound Sanctuary, sometimes it's not. But that's all part of the fun. And really it's about, you come to me for some opinions and advice, but it's your ear and your taste that ultimately make a decision about what ends up in your home. And we're not in the mood to stand in the way of that at all. It's like when you hear something and you know it's right, congratulations.
Yeah. And as you know, my background, even though I was in the electronics industry, I was in the supply chain part of that. So I really am not a technical guy, but I'm familiar with technology. And through my career, I interfaced with all the leading tech companies and know that technology changes. And one of the game changers, as I look back, without a doubt, was digital. And whether or not that was CD back in the early 80s, which is when I got my first CD player, and how that has evolved, and it continues to evolve.
So were you a big vinyl person too? You went from vinyl to CD and stayed CD?
We all started in vinyl. I mean, if you have Hair My Color, you started...
Or Hair My Color.
you started with some type of vinyl. And in my career, for the
Were
first...
you ever in the Columbia Record and Tape Club?
Of course.
Who was it?
They're still chasing
Was it
me.
16 for a penny?
I think it was Beach Boys, it was The Doors, it was back in the 60s. And I reflect back, those were still phenomenal
I think
records.
the peak of recorded music is 1973, almost.
Is that a fact?
The variety
Yeah.
of music that was in the top 40,
Yeah.
it wasn't just pop hits, it was, ethnic stuff, rock and roll.
Well, you had Motown, which was a complete genre in itself, and everything that came from there. Then you had, obviously, the English invasion. You had the immersion of, whatever you call it, Cream, Led Zeppelin, that heavier rock, if you will.
I have a distinct memory of Cream, that album. My parents had friends who had a system, and it was one of these ones that filled a wall, and it had a reel-to-reel kind of installed in the wall. And I heard Cream on reel-to-reel in 71 or whatever it was. And, can't say I really remember the sound. It was just like all this technology on a wall was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny, it can be a very high-tech, I wouldn't call it hobby, but like the equipment we sell, some of it does really have crazy technology in it, but a lot of it has been around for a while.
No doubt.
It continues to be refined, and I will say, with few exceptions, the sound that we heard back in the day, during these formative experiences, we were hearing a fraction of what was in that record,
doubt.
on that tape. And I think we're in the golden age of music reproduction right now. The variety of music that you can get at the touch of, at the tip of your fingers. Digital was kind of a nasty word for a while. It didn't seem that way at first. Like CDs were so much cleaner than records.
Well, they were easier to manage. They were space friendly. There was just a lot of...
You click through the tracks from your seat instead of getting up.
Well, and by the way, it evolved into you could bring them to your car. You could put them in the car, which was obviously something you couldn't do with LPs. They weren't as scratch. In fact, there were times I think I had cars that had 8-disc CD changers, so you could load that, make a trip.
Seemed like enough of a variety.
There was just a lot. So
but a lot of that early CD sound was really pretty challenging, and I mean,
if I listen to it now, it's unlistenable.
I have probably several thousand CDs. I'd never play them. Even though we have some great players at the shop. It was vinyl that kind of got me back into music.
Yes,
personally. With an artist friend of mine had a turntable. I dropped the needle and I was like, "That's what a LP sounds like." I had forgotten, and music at the early Apple iTunes was so bad that I almost stopped listening to music. I had about an hour commute back in my old life, and some of that stuff was just horrible. In the end, I was doing books on tape instead of listening to music, but thankfully things have gotten better. So from that original system. With the wedding gifts, did things modify quickly?
Well, here's what's interesting. And I said, okay, what has driven change to my system? And the first thing I would say is money. I didn't have a lot. I had a family. I had to raise a family. And because of that, the priority scheme...
So were things on pause for 20 years in a way, or not really?
Kinda.
Okay.
A pause for me, which is probably
6
not
months?
a pause for other... But I would say I was an early adopter with home theater, got involved with pretty good home theater systems. We're sitting in my current one. This is the 5th one that I've built, not to the extent of the equipment I have, but all have been nice media rooms, if you will. So, but for a good while, it was really more surround sound and all of that.
And I would say you're kind of unique in that. I mean, of course, a lot of people listen to music in their theater rooms, but you've really tried to establish a balance.
It's pretty 50-50.
Sometimes theater, I mean, I'm not a home theater builder per se. I collaborate with some. The kind of music that you get from most of those systems, maybe it's like a big concert video, but it doesn't have the delicacy and the positioning that the best of 2-channel audio does.
Totally different to me.
But you can have both, and you have found a way to have both.
Yeah.
So a lot of the equipment we sell will have a theater pass-through mode, so you're using your superior electronics for your 2-channel music experience.
Yeah, it's a different game now. I mean, I had... if you look back, my systems for home theater were really pretty good systems.
Yeah, of course.
A few of them were built around 802 D3 B&Ws, but I always kind of Macintosh gear. So no, it's not what I have now, but still for the time it was pretty good. But
that's a huge leap from ceiling speakers and wall speakers, or some this is lower on the consumer thing. Like there's a lot of very tinny hi-fi that's made into surround sound.
So for me, money was obviously always a gaining factor, particularly early on. I always had a job. I traveled a lot, so time was a big deal, and then just how big a priority is it? And I've got a lot of hobbies. I enjoy a lot doing. As you're aware, I'm an avid golfer, not a great golfer, but I enjoy it. I've been a boater in my life. I enjoy photography. I enjoy travel. So I've got a lot of diversified interest. And when the pot's X amount, you kind of say, okay, how am I going to allocate that? And with family, that always becomes your priority. So the game kind of changed as my kids went on to college, became empty nesting. About 2000, I decided that in addition, I went out and I got a tube amp, if you will, a carry tube amp, Moon Audio CD player, but at the time, it was a few $1,000s, but to me that was a high end, and got cords that actually cost more than a few dollars. And then I bought some JM Lab Utopia bookshelf speakers. And I converted one of my empty bedrooms now, as my kids were gone, into my listening room.
Okay.
And that really began a more serious look into the audiophile realm. So I did that, and that, let's just say, you put your toe in, and now I've got my legs in and my hips in and all of that.
But the fun thing about the hobby is that it's so, was it modular, or however you want to say it?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to all evolve at once. Yeah. Single pieces can make a dramatic increase in your, the performance of your system. You mentioned, upgraded power cords,
obviously with you, I upgraded all my power cords here. And I would say if there was a big revelation to me in the last 10 years, it's been how big an impact chords can have. And I was kind of the view, I knew I needed to get an audio label for power chords, but I didn't understand the difference between $100 and $1,000, or potentially even more than that. And over the last number of years, with some of your help, by the way.
Well, I guess in particular, the Shunyata Altaira grounding system. Really integrated.
That had a profound impact. Remember, you did the demo, you had them at your shop.
And you're like,
and I said, oh my God, there's not a lot I can do that is this reasonable, that had that profound of an impact on the sound.
And it was like an upgrade of your entire system.
It was like having a whole piece of equipment change. So, and then power chords had a big deal, and all of that was the last 10 years, the revelation that was a big deal.
What's good about, especially the chords part of it, it's pretty easy to experiment within your own system doing that. If you come into the shop, we do have things that you can take home and live with it. Shunyata in particular is very particular about how long has the cord been in the client system. They want you to plug it in and just let it sit there and acclimate for a couple of days. I don't know about the science for that, but they swear that there is a settling in of the cord. You were in the electronics, but
I can't tell. All I know is what my ears tell me.
And if it improves, it improves.
And so I've learned enough to know that I formed no opinion for the first few weeks. Well, I'm pretty good about burning in my equipment. Now, I may listen because, we're all natural.
But the real judgment's got to happen.
But as far as being a critical listen, I have no judgment for a few weeks of continuous play. And then I can say, okay, and it makes a difference. And that part of it, even in other electronics, whether it was computers, whatever it may be, there used to be a thing called burn-in. and manufacturers of components and equipment would burn in their equipment because it was just settling in and getting everything, all your caps filled and everything working together, and it does have an impact.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard, it kind of goes to the dealer network. One, we prepare you for that. Two, you've heard it settled in our demo systems. Maybe you've done an in-home demo. That's very different than ordering something online.
No doubt.
And even if it's on a 60-day free trial or returnable, it's very, having the patience to, well, one, did you make the right decision in choosing the component anyway? There's two schools of thought about it. So we've always been very collaborative in our efforts.
Well, what we did is, frankly, you gave me a loom of a brand you carried. I had another vendor who sent me a loom of what they carried, and I kept both of them for about 2 weeks. And I did every combination of listening you can imagine, and ultimately came up what was right for my system and right for this room. And I couldn't be happier. So that was I would say, if I talk in the last 10 years, was a big reveal, was how important cabling was. And to your point, to me, it had as big of an impact as getting new equipment.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, going back, so I had my first tube set up, and that was in the 2000-ish, so 25 years ago. Then I
decided you wanted some bass grip, so you changed that.
No, well, I'm trying to think. What I did next is I went into electrostatics.
Oh, okay.
And I had a YBA integrated amp, which was a French company that was a pretty good integrated, and I bought some quad electrostatics, and I had a REL subwoofer at that time, had upgraded power and all of that, and I converted a bedroom again in my new house at this time, and it sounded wonderful. But it was very unsocial. You walk into my room and there was a single chair, and these quads are pretty imposing, 5 feet tall, and they're wide and all of that. And I would spend hours in there.
Just staring into the screen.
They go, well, where does Ann sit? And I go, well, it's kind of like me, but it sounded really good. In fact, I had a friend at the time who was a neighbor who had a really, really big system. And he said, your system is so, he had Boulder and he had Wilson's, and he goes, the sound of this is so good, but it was a pretty limited system. Then I decided to try to do my first home theater, and we had sold our company, which helped the cause. The checkbook
massive
was
system upgrade.
The checkbook. So I was looking to build a new house. And my wife says, well, why are you looking to build a house? We love it where we're at and all of that. And I go, because I want a media room. I want a kick-ass media room. And she said, well, let's see if we can get a kick-ass media room built in this house. And lo and behold, we were at a charity auction. And one of the auction items was the schematics for a high-end media room.
Huh.
So I'm bidding on this against a guy who happened to be a friend of mine who didn't know we were bidding against. He thought the whole system was being bid.
Oh.
So he's taken the value of this to me. I had already looked into having this done, and I knew the value was about 10 grand, and that if I could get this for a couple of grand at this charity auction, because who else is going to be looking at this?
But someone thought he was bidding on $100,000.
He thought he was bidding on a $10,000 system.
Okay.
And it wasn't towards, he pulled out about $5,000 or $6,000 that so it ended up cost me a few grand more than I want, but at the end of the day,
it was for the kids.
It was great. It was great. So but it was kind of a comical story of how the whole thing evolved. And so then I tried to begin my journey of multi-purpose, because the fact is, there's always going to be space limitations of somehow, and to dedicate strictly for 2-channel, I didn't find it. So I said, there's got to be a way I could do both. And I learned a lot during that. And, thank God I learned my lesson early and whatever, but spent way too much money on acoustic treatment. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, okay.
I got kind of sold a bill of goods, if you will. That's how he made. He was donating the architectural scheme so I could buy a lot of money on acoustical treatment.
Interesting.
It was one of the, and so I learned I didn't have to do that moving ahead. But anyway, that was my first endeavor doing both. And it was a really, really good media room. And it was not as good as my little system with the quads and all of that, but it was pretty doggone good.
But more than one person could listen.
Right. And I
sometimes that's important.
Fit 10 people in there and used it for entertaining. I did my 2-channel listing. And then, I retired. We sold our business, retired, built a home in Arizona, and we, again, did the media room there. And there I used kind of Class A. I used the B&W speakers, used Class A equipment, which was not
well thought of.
Yeah, it was well thought of, Canadian company, and I was very satisfied with that. But then, as my journey continued, and my time freed up in the sense that I was no longer working.
And you spent a good amount of time going to dealers and listening.
That's always been my hobby.
Yeah.
Was to
What's
learn
new?
what's new.
You visit me pretty often.
and frankly, the owner of the company that I work for also had an interest, so he wanted me to go to CES, and this is when CES used to have a dedicated hotel for the audio, and at that time that was the only event, but it was a great event to go to. Everybody was there, hundreds of rooms, and so I went to CES several times, and with the focus on audio, so that kind of got me going on what's out there and all of that. And then, basically from there, obviously the home that I built here, we built this room very specifically for how we're using it. And
then it all started with this pair of subwoofers from Sound Sanctuary Austin.
Yeah, well, that was, because I didn't know you existed at that time, because we moved here in 2013. We were in a condo at that time. And then I moved into a home that I had built. And at that time, I don't think you started
in 20.
Yeah. So I right about when
I'm
the
the
COVID.
newbie.
Yeah.
I'm the new kid.
And a friend of mine who said, there's a new shop in town you should go check out. Yeah. And I went in, and let's just say the rest is history in that context.
We've done a few things since then, and but I got to say, Craig is always looking for the next improvement. Sometimes it's a little sideways move, and it's like, okay, well, that was all right. Let me go back to here. I mean, but really, you don't. I wouldn't say any step is a bad step. You've never been.
Well,
you've never been like, oh God, what have I done? At least in our experience.
No. I mean, I do extensive reading. It's my hobby. I've subscribed to all the magazines. I read all the magazines. I watch all the videos. I only went recently to a couple of trade shows. I hadn't done that for a number of years, but I also do that with a open mind that this is not going to be the best. If you really want to get the best sound, you go to a dealer, you set up an appointment, and you allocate time. You have a set list of music that you're familiar with, that you're familiar with it on your system, and you've heard it enough that you can tell the nuances of what you're listening to here. And that's so. The shows are interesting to say, hey, let me filter down where I want to go next to listen. But you really need to go into your shop and sit down, and I do. We become friends, so it's not a hard thing for me to do, and I'm retired, so I've got time. But I enjoy...
There's a few lunches.
Yeah, a few lunches. And I enjoy going in to visit Glenn. I enjoy listening to what he has new. He's opened my eyes on a lot of things. He's certainly in the chords. You were instrumental in that. subs I bought from you, but I was familiar with that. Wilson, I wasn't that familiar with, and became a big fan of them. And
we've got, I guess, let's talk about where your system is now. Behind us are some Wilson Alexx's. It's not the current model; it's the predecessor, but has a lot of the scale and the presence of that speaker. And he found it, basically a certified pre-owned opportunity through me on them. And
well, it's funny because I go into his shop often. These were not in his shop. And all of a sudden, but I go to Audiogon on a regular basis.
What's this?
And I go, wait a second, this is Glenn, and I called you up, and I say, what's going on? And you told me the story. Yeah. And the thing that Glenn's familiar with, I would say that 50% of what I buy typically demo, slightly used, but I really like to buy from a dealer. I don't like to buy from any individual
stranger,
because I want to have the context of the company behind it and all of that. So certainly, and then half I buy new. So I buy a blend of both. But for me, my dollar has gone a lot further doing that. How it works.
So that actually was a situation that worked out for both of us. So you got to kind of the major size in Wilson.
I wanted a bigger scale. Yeah. I had you sell them also. I had bought them before I knew you.
The Sonus Faber.
The Sonus Faber Ilkramanese, which I really liked the sound of that. But as I moved into this home and I had this room, I wanted a larger scale, and these do the job. Mm-hmm. And so then it was the experimentation of power. Yeah. And in 3 years,
we did some cabling, but you've kind of arrived to one of our newest portfolio additions, CH Precision from Switzerland, and you have a 1 series stack, an L1.
L1, X1. So this is the X1, the power supply. This is the M1.1, but it's been upgraded to all the current specs.
Yep. So and we're feeding that with a dCS Rossini with a master clock,
which I bought from you here in the last 9 months, 8 months, something like that.
And these are all just kind of they're all excellent pieces, but the kind of the timing, the air, the nuance of CH is incredible. And then we explored some of the calibration that we've talked about. If you've watched our videos, the interview with Kevin Wolf about configuring the inputs.
Well, that helped me a lot.
Yeah. I mean, whole nother level of performance. And it's these are, and that kind of technology is kind of different. It's a preamp. How is that going to? I thought it was just a cool volume control. Well,
trust me,
analyzes what's plugged into it and optimizes.
I've tried every config. I've had multiple preamps. Number one, I've tried tube. I've tried solid state. At a variety of price points, and then I tried the DAC Direct, which a lot of places tout that you can do that. Without a doubt, a good preamp makes a big difference in the sound. And so I'm very happy right now, but it took me a while, as you well know. I started out with D'Agostino, then I bought a Luxman from you, then I went to some oddball European make, and ended up didn't last. I got a good deal, but I at the end of the day, it wasn't what I was looking for.
And now you're at CH, and I mean, and there's room
and
to
I'm
go
a big
there.
fan. I'm a big fan.
So we're, I bug you occasionally, maybe about a different rack or something, but it's an interesting hobby where each of these steps just keep on unlocking more of your music, and it's just been a pleasure being part of your journey and getting here. And
the thing that, again, I there are some breakthroughs in speaker technology, but there's not this huge breakthrough, and the stuff that uses DSP, I'm typically not a big favor of.
Well, if your room's decent, you really...
Right.
It's all about putting it in the right space of the room, although getting everything to sing right, it is a labor of love. We recently presented at a big audio show in our area, and the amount of time that we put into getting our speakers just right. But the
Well, I mean, I'm biased, and I think the world of David, and
we're talking about my Wilson,
his Wilson guy
who's just excellent, and every time I work with him, I learn more and about the focus that you have to really, you can put a Wilson speaker in the room, but like what it does for you when you just get it really, really, really.
He teaches me about everything, though. Yeah. I mean, partly he's been in the industry a long time. He's worked for a few different companies, so he's got the hands-on experience. But being now a key guy at Wilson, he's interfaced these speakers with every configuration you can imagine, be it cabling, be it electronics, whatever that may be. So he's got a really good recommendation of how to maximize it.
And those are all resources that I am proud to, without shame, ask for help and get that assistance and bring that value to our clients and the excellent performance.
A couple things that I would, how have I leveraged our relationship, not in a difficult way, but I have found these listening sessions that you bring the manufacturers in, and you do that a lot, and I think you're kind of unique. Certainly in my experience, I never had a dealer that did that, or as much as you do it. And that has been extremely valuable. And as you know me, my mind's ticking as I walk out of there going, okay, what did I learn?
We try to do a lot of film content with those guys too, to bring that to a wider audience. So just to remember, you guys should subscribe and please, rate us highly and rank us. That helps our stuff get more visible and more popular out there. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you've got an active Facebook presence that I'm an active subscriber to. But for me personally, you do it more than once a month. I don't know how many.
Let's say average once a month.
Average once a month. But I have found those to be extremely enjoyable, very informative. You're dealing with other audiophiles, so I enjoy the group
it's all
that
part
comes.
Of that you said you read, you watch the videos. Please watch our videos, but actually hearing the stuff in the room is just an experience that can't be duplicated.
And then listening from the experts, the vendor experts, and learning about the technology and the thought that went into things. You had a CH presentation here, and I learned something on, I already had the CH preamp, but I was not using it to its full capacity. And I came back and made the adjustment, and I go, whoa. It really made a nice difference. So that has been very helpful.
We're going to show you some CH gear that will hopefully tempt you some more in the months ahead. So
yeah, to me, I'm biased.
Get that checkbook ready.
To me, I'm very biased. But they're a different price point.
Yeah.
And now that my kids are out of school and I'm retired and all of that, there's a little bit of money for that. Although sometimes I overspend my budget, but
anyway, I just appreciate the time and kind of an interesting tale of your thing. Now we're going to do a little bit of listening. Tune in, see us again sometime soon.
Yeah,
thanks, Craig.
Thanks a million. Appreciate the time.